All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, this one's going to be pretty interesting, I think. We're diving deep today into the world of intercompany transactions and the latest updates to SAP Material Ledger and SAT Group Reporting.
That's right. We'll be taking a close look at
Because
how these updates can help companies manage the complexities of global trade.
exactly. And to guide us through this complex world, we'll be using a fascinating article from SAP Insider Magazine. It's called Working with SAP Material Ledger and SAP Group Reporting in JNA 2022 by Dr. Marcos Esfantes Monge.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it. So the article starts off with a real-world scenario that really sets the stage for all the challenges that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So imagine Company A. It's based in Europe. It gets this huge order for 1,000 units of their product, but they only have 500 units on hand locally.
Oh boy. So what do they do?
Well, they have to source the remaining 500 units from their various plants and companies all over the globe.
Yeah.
The U.S., South America, Asia, you name it.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. It really is. And each of these locations likely has different costs, different profit margins, and even different currencies to deal with.
Right. It's not just about getting the products where they need to go. It's about managing the financial implications of those movements, too.
Exactly. And this is where things get really complicated because it's not just a supply chain issue. We're talking about finance, operations, taxes, the whole nine yards.
It affects everyone. The article even mentions how Dr. Sisvantes Monge encountered consulting firms offering solutions they hadn't actually implemented themselves.
Wow. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
So how do these SAP updates help companies navigate this tangled web?
Well, let's start with SAP Material Ledger, or ML for short. Think of it like this. ML is like a powerful subledger within SAP's controlling module. Now, the controlling module helps companies manage their costs in SAP.
Right. That's the brains of the finance system.
Exactly. ML takes it a step further by providing really granular details about the actual cost of your materials. It's like having a microscope to analyze every aspect of your costs.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is so important. But can you give us a concrete example of why this level of detail is so critical?
Sure. Let's say one of your suppliers raises their prices. ML lets you track exactly how that price change ripples through your production process. It also helps you see how intercompany profit is baked into your inventory.
So you can avoid counting those profits twice when one company in your group sells to another at a markup.
Precisely. And there's more. You can view your material costs in different currencies, crucial for companies operating across borders. ML even helps you manage transfer pricing between your profit centers.
So if you're moving components from, say, Brazil to Germany, ML makes sure those transfers are priced fairly, which helps avoid tax issues and internal disputes.
Absolutely. It's all about creating a transparent and accurate picture of your costs and profitability. A pretty powerful tool to have in your toolkit.
For sure. But what about SAP group reporting? Where does that fit into all of this?
Group reporting is the new go-to tool for consolidation in SAP. It's replacing SAP BPC, and it helps you bring all of your financial data from all your different companies together into one cohesive set of financial statements.
So it's like taking all those pieces of the puzzle from your different subsidiaries and putting them together to see the full picture.
Exactly. And group reporting is designed to seamlessly work with data from SAP Analytics Cloud. And it comes with awesome new enhancements in the latest S/4HANA releases, things like custom fields and custom logic. It makes it incredibly powerful and flexible.
Sounds impressive. But I have a feeling it's not all smooth sailing when you try to use these two tools together.
You're right to be skeptical. The article does highlight some potential snags when you start combining the power of ML and group reporting, and that's exactly what we'll be diving into next.
Perfect. Well, let's take a quick break and then come back and tackle those challenges head on. Okay, so we've got ML zeroing in on all those nitty-gritty operational costs, and then we've got group reporting tackling the big picture of financial consolidation. Sounds like a match made in heaven,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling it's not quite that simple, is it?
You're right to be a little hesitant. The article does point out some potential bumps in the road when you're using these two powerful tools together. For example, we now have two different ways to manage inventory profit eliminations. We can do it through ML, or we can do it through SAP group reporting.
So which way is the right way? Or is it one of those it depends situations?
You know me. It's always going to depend.
But seriously, there are a few key things to consider. How comfortable is your team with ML already? What are your specific operational needs compared to your consolidation requirements? And maybe the most important question is, how much data are we dealing with here? ML can churn out a ton of data, so having a good data management plan is absolutely critical. That's a really good point. Too much detail could actually cause more problems than it solves, especially if it leads to performance issues. But let's go back to the core difference between these two tools. It seems like ML is all about the day-to-day operations, while group reporting is more focused on the financial reporting side of things.
Exactly. It's important to remember that ML, as powerful as it is not a consolidation tool. It's designed for managing those granular costs at a very detailed level. Group reporting, on the other hand, is built specifically for financial consolidation, which includes those tricky currency translation adjustments, those calculations that come into play when you're dealing with different currencies.
Right, right. So if you're using both ML and group reporting, how do you decide which data to use for your consolidation? Seems like you could easily end up counting things twice if you're not careful.
Oh, absolutely. That's a common trap that people fall into. Dr. Sisvantes Monge actually recommends sticking with the local currency data, which aligns with the legal valuation in ML. Use that as the starting point for all your consolidation activities and group reporting. That way, everything stays consistent, and it helps avoid those double counting headaches.
Consistency is definitely key,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with such complex financial data.
Mhm.
Speaking of headaches, there's another area that the article mentions that I wanted to touch on, cash flow reporting.
Ah, yes, cash flow reporting. That can be a whole other beast when you're dealing with intercompany transactions and inventory valuations.
Is there any guidance on how to manage cash flow reporting with these new updates? Or is it just a matter of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best?
Well, the article doesn't go into a ton of detail about the specifics of cash flow reporting with these updates, but it does point to some resources where you can explore real-time and automated solutions, which could be worth checking out if that's a pain point for your company.
It sounds like there's a lot to think about here. It's not just about implementing new tools. It's about understanding how they impact your overall financial processes. And it might even change how different departments work together.
That's a really important insight. These SAP updates, while they're incredibly powerful, also highlight the need for clear communication and collaboration between departments, especially between operations and finance.
Because at the end of the day, data is only useful if everyone understands it and can use it to make good decisions.
Right. Absolutely. These tools can provide amazing insights, but they're only as good as the people using them.
So to sum up this part of our deep dive, it seems like SAP is giving companies more and more options for managing these complex financial processes. But that also comes with more complexity.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. More power means more responsibility, more potential for incredible insights, but also more potential for massive confusion.
Well said. So the key takeaway here is to carefully consider your specific needs and have a solid plan before you jump into implementation. But that's not all the article has to offer, is it?
Not quite. There's one more thought-provoking question that Dr. Sisvantes Manja leaves us with, and I think it's worth exploring. Now that SAP offers multiple ways to manage intercompany profit, how could this impact the way companies are structured and how their workflows operate, especially between those operational and financial departments that we were just talking about?
Now that's an interesting question. Will these new options lead to better collaboration? Or will they just create more silos?
It's tough to say for sure. It
Fine.
really comes down to how companies decide to implement these tools and how they adapt their existing processes. Maybe it'll help streamline things and break down those traditional barriers between departments, or maybe it'll lead to even more specialization and more separation between departments.
It almost feels like SAP is handing us this puzzle to solve,
Hmm.
but they're not giving us all the instructions for how the pieces fit together.
I like that analogy. It's up to each company to figure out the best way to put those pieces together for their own unique situation. There's no magic bullet or one-size-fits-all answer.
I guess that's what keeps things interesting. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to rethink how we do things and potentially find better, more efficient ways to manage these complex processes.
Exactly. And that's where the true value lies. It's not just about implementing new software. It's about using that software to drive positive change within the organization.
So for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all of this, what's the main takeaway they should keep in mind?
I think the most important thing is to approach these changes with a curious mindset and a willingness to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions, experiment with different approaches, and even make a few mistakes along the way.
It's easy to get bogged down in all the technical stuff and lose sight of the big picture.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are experts out there like Dr. Sisvantes Monge who've been through all of this and can offer valuable guidance.
Absolutely. Finding a trusted advisor who can help you tailor these tools to your specific needs can be a game changer.
You got it. At the end of the day, knowledge is power. And in the world of SAP, the more you know, the less scary these changes become.
Well said. So to wrap up our deep dive, it seems like SAP is always evolving, offering new possibilities, but also throwing new challenges our way.
That's the nature of the game.
And it's up to us to stay informed, adapt, and figure out how to use these advancements to our advantage.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the wild world of intercompany transactions in SAP. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit fun.
It's certainly been an engaging conversation.
Until next time, fellow deep divers, keep exploring, keep learning, and never be afraid to ask those tough questions. That is a fascinating question. Will these new options lead to more collaboration between departments, or will they create even more silos?
It's hard to say for sure. It really depends on how companies choose to implement these tools and adapt their processes. Maybe it'll streamline workflows and break down those traditional barriers between departments.
Yeah.
Or maybe it will lead to even more specialization and even more departmentalization.
It almost feels like SAP is giving us all these puzzle pieces, but they're not telling us exactly how they all fit together.
That's a great analogy. It really is up to each company to figure out the best way to assemble those pieces to fit their specific situation. There's no one-size-fits-all solution here.
That's what makes it so interesting, though, right? It's a challenge for sure, but it's also an opportunity to step back and rethink how we do things.
Yeah.
Maybe we can find more efficient and effective ways to manage these complex processes.
Exactly. And that's where the real value lies. It's not just about the software. It's about using that software to make positive changes within the organization.
So for our listeners out there who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all this, what's the one key takeaway they should remember?
I think the most important thing is to approach these changes with curiosity and a willingness to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Experiment with different approaches. And don't worry if you make a few mistakes along the way.
Mistakes are part of the learning process.
Yep.
It's easy to get lost in the weeds with all the technical details and forget about the bigger picture.
Right. And don't forget, you don't have to do this alone. There are experts out there like Dr. Sisfantas Monge who have tons of experience navigating these complexities and can provide some really valuable guidance.
For sure. Finding the right advisor who can help you tailor these tools to your specific needs can be a game changer.
It really can. At the end of the day, knowledge is power. And in the world of SAP, the more you know, the less intimidating these changes become.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive today. It seems like SAP is always evolving, offering new and exciting possibilities,
Yeah,
but also presenting us with new challenges.
absolutely.
And it's up to us to stay informed, adapt, and figure out how to use these changes to our advantage.
Well said.
A huge thank you to everyone for joining us today on this deep dive into the world of intercompany transactions in SAP.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found this discussion insightful and maybe even a little bit fun.
I know I did.
Until next time, fellow deep divers, keep exploring, keep learning, and never be afraid to ask those tough questions.